Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into a time when pregnancy wasn't exactly the magical, glowing experience it is often portrayed as today. Imagine being pregnant in a medieval village, where your day-to-day life is already a battle for survival, and now you're carrying a tiny human with no modern comforts. You probably won't survive this, and honestly, you might even wonder how anyone managed to make it through the process. But we're going to walk you through the struggles, the risks, and the very real, very harsh realities of medieval pregnancy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'll be curious to know where you're tuning in from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're living in a medieval village, and one morning, you realize you're pregnant. Well, that is, you think you are. It's not exactly like you can take a quick trip to the pharmacy for a pregnancy test. Instead, you rely on your own body's signals and maybe some advice from the local herbalist or midwife. The idea of symptoms isn't fully developed, so you may just start noticing things like missed periods, if you're lucky enough to have a consistent cycle, or a sudden craving for food that's difficult to explain. But don't get too excited, because things are about to get difficult. You live in a time when the concept of prenatal care, or any health care for that matter, is not a thing. The closest thing to a medical professional you can find is a midwife, and let's just say that care is a very loose term. Midwives in medieval villages were typically women who had learned the trade through trial and error or by passing down knowledge from mother to daughter. Sometimes, their skills included ancient herbal remedies and a few superstitions passed down through generations. The idea of offering sound medical advice like we would expect today was practically unheard of. As you trudge through the early stages of pregnancy, you realize there's no doctor to turn to, no ultrasound to confirm the growing baby inside you, and no real way to track the progress of your pregnancy beyond your own fluctuating symptoms. Your weight might increase slightly, but that's about as far as anyone would go in terms of assessing your health. It's not just the physical strain, though mentally you're overwhelmed by the isolation and fear of what's to come. Let's take a step back and consider what your life looks like as a medieval woman before you even get pregnant. You're no stranger to hard work. Whether it's farming, tending to livestock, making clothing, or preparing food, you're always busy. Pregnancy doesn't slow you down much. In fact, many women worked until the very day they gave birth, sometimes even during labor itself. With a lack of real maternity leave, there's simply no time to rest or take it easy, even though your body might be screaming for it. For a lot of women, there's no choice but to keep going. Your family relies on you, and the entire village operates on this unspoken rule that everyone has to pitch in. You may even be carrying a basket of grain on your back while you're well into your second trimester. There's no sympathy for you if you're pregnant, just more work. And let's not forget about the constant strain of worry. What if this pregnancy doesn't last? What if you don't survive the birth? Medieval villages were notorious for their high rates of infant mortality, and it wasn't unusual for women to have multiple pregnancies but not many children living past infancy. And it's not just the physical demands of pregnancy that take their toll. When you think about how little help you actually have, it hits you. This village isn't exactly a place of comfort or reassurance when it comes to raising children. You've got no hospitals, no professionals who understand what you're going through, and no one who really knows how to make things easier. It's not all doom and gloom, though. You might find some comfort in the older women of the village who share their experiences with you, whether you want to hear them or not. Historically, we know that medieval villages had no formalized medical training for most people, especially women. Women's health wasn't really prioritized, and childbirth was considered a natural yet dangerous part of life. Some argue that midwives were the backbone of childbirth in medieval villages, providing the best care available, but others argue they lacked the true medical knowledge to prevent the URI now well into your pregnancy, and the early signs were just the beginning. You're starting to notice more changes, physical, emotional, and mental. The symptoms are now unmistakable, and there's no mistaking that you're pregnant, even if there's still no formal way to confirm it. Your body is adjusting in ways that make even the hardest tasks feel like monumental feats. Yet, there's no slowing down because the life you lead in a medieval village doesn't care about your pregnancy. You've got work to do. The problem with recognizing pregnancy symptoms in a time where medical knowledge is scarce is that many signs of pregnancy are easily confused with other ailments. Without proper tests or knowledge about how a pregnancy truly progresses, many women had to rely on intuition or worse, superstitions. A missed period, if you even had a consistent one, or feeling unusually tired were some of the first indicators. But the rest of the process, well, that's a bit trickier. You might start feeling nauseous, which is a pretty common symptom, but back then, it wasn't known as morning sickness or something to expect. It was just chalked up to a bad stomach or a sign that you were ailing. Women didn't have the luxury of laying in bed with ginger tea or popping anti-nausea meds. You simply had to get through it. If you were lucky enough to have a trusted midwife, she might offer you some kind of remedy, herbal teas, perhaps, or a concoction made from locally available plants. But even these could be risky, as not all remedies were effective, and some might have even been harmful if the herbs were misused. The whole experience is uncomfortable. Sure, you're excited about the baby, but also terrified because you've heard the stories. Miscarriages were common, and the risk of complications loomed over every step. At least when the midwife visits you, she might bring along some old wisdom from her mother or grandmother, but that doesn't make you feel safe. You know that childbirth and pregnancy in general is fraught with dangers, some you can't even comprehend. The issue of complications is one that hangs over you like a cloud. For most medieval women, there was no way to know whether the pregnancy was progressing well or whether something was wrong. An unexpected cramp could mean that the baby wasn't developing correctly, but it could also just be a part of the process. No ultrasounds, no checkups, just a gut feeling and a constant state of fear. You may have had a friend who lost a baby at 3 months, or a relative who didn't survive childbirth. The stories are constant, and they make it difficult to feel anything but dread. Historians still argue whether medieval women had more complicated pregnancies or whether they were simply more aware of the risks involved. Some believe that the sheer lack of healthcare made every pregnancy a potential death sentence, while others suggest that it's a bit of a myth and that women simply accepted the risks as a part of life. Either way, it's a terrifying experience to have your body changing and not really know whether it's for the better or the worse. But it's not just the physical symptoms you have to contend with. It's the emotional side of things as well. You may feel completely isolated, as pregnancy in a medieval village often meant no one truly understood what you were going through. You can't go to a doctor or support group. There's no one to tell you that your fatigue and irritability are normal. Instead, your only real outlet is your family, and even they might not get it. The emotional toll of pregnancy is something that medieval women had to suffer through alone. In a time where emotional support wasn't prioritized, and mental health wasn't even recognized as a thing, you have to bottle up whatever anxieties you have. If you're lucky, your husband might show some compassion, but in reality, he's probably focused on the more immediate concerns of daily survival. Farming, hunting, or making sure the family is fed. He may not fully grasp the toll your pregnancy is taking on you, both physically and mentally. That isolation can be crushing. You might get the occasional visit from a friend or neighbor, but that's about it. It's not like you can send out a "we're expecting" announcement or even talk about it much, because pregnancy is just part of life, no big deal, really. It's expected that you'll carry on with your regular tasks. Your neighbors might have a passing comment or offer some old wives' tales about how to ease the discomfort. But in general, you're alone with your body's changes and your growing fear. Meanwhile, your community might offer you little more than advice rooted in superstition. Maybe someone suggests you rub a certain stone or make an offering to a deity to ensure a healthy pregnancy. The belief in magic and divine intervention is common, but so is the pressure to maintain the appearance of calm, normalcy. If you show any sign of distress or fear, you risk being seen as weak, which is simply not an option. Now, imagine dealing with all of this while still carrying out the responsibilities of everyday life. You're probably still doing the chores, working the fields, caring for the livestock, preparing food. Sure, you might be able to sit down more, or maybe you're excused from the hardest labor, but you're still expected to contribute to the well-being of the household. There's no maternity leave or time off when you're living in a small, self-sustaining community. Pregnancy, like everything else, is just another part of life. So, as you continue through your pregnancy, you're feeling more physically and emotionally drained than ever. But don't think for a second that this is an excuse to slow down. Life doesn't stop for your pregnancy. You keep going, hoping that somehow you'll make it through to the other side. Many common complications of pregnancy and childbirth. You, in this case, would be one of the many who trusted your survival to a mix of tradition, luck, and perhaps a few risky practices. Pregnancy wasn't just about growing a baby, it was about surviving. The survival rates for both mothers and infants during this time were grim. In fact, historians argue that medieval pregnancies were more about enduring hardship than celebrating the idea of new life. The risks of miscarriage, stillbirth, or death in childbirth were ever present, and women were constantly walking that line between hope and despair. This is only the beginning of your journey, and you'll soon find that the stakes are much higher than just dealing with early symptoms. As your pregnancy progresses, so too does the harsh reality of medieval life, where every step could feel like it might be your last. As your pregnancy continues, you find yourself navigating the daily grind with a mix of exhaustion and anxiety. The signs of pregnancy are becoming more pronounced, but so are the risks. The village, though small, has its share of gossip, and now that you're visibly pregnant, everyone's opinion seems to be free for the taking. You can hear it in their voices, whether it's concern or curiosity. Everyone's watching you, and every step feels like it could be your last. The pressure of community expectations hangs heavily on your shoulders. Let's talk about the body. By this point in your pregnancy, the physical strain is undeniable. You might have started showing more, and with that comes not just the weight of a growing baby, but also the constant strain on your back and legs. You're still working, of course, despite the constant fatigue. After all, there's no choice but to continue your labor, whether it's fetching water from the well, helping with the animals, or tending to the garden. You don't get to rest unless the weather forces you to stay inside. Your muscles ache, and your feet swell, but there's no time to dwell on that. But as the weeks pass, you can feel something else happening in your body, something much more worrying. The constant pressure on your abdomen can sometimes lead to severe cramps, sharp pains that make you stop in your tracks and wonder if something's wrong. Without a proper understanding of pregnancy, this could just be a natural part of the process, or it could be a sign that something's terribly wrong. You don't know, and there's no one who can tell you. You're left to fend for yourself, interpreting every twinge and ache as best as you can. You try not to worry, but how could you not? The knowledge that many women didn't survive childbirth is always in the back of your mind. In medieval times, pregnancy-related complications weren't exactly well understood. For instance, things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and ectopic pregnancies were likely seen as mysterious or even supernatural. Most people believed that certain symptoms, such as swelling, fatigue, or vomiting, were just the result of a woman carrying a heavy load or being cursed. There's a good chance you've heard of or experienced these symptoms without anyone offering any real insight or guidance. You're in the dark, and it's a terrifying place to be when the stakes are so high. Your midwife may be the only one you can rely on for any form of advice, but her knowledge is limited. While she may have seen her fair share of births, she is just as ill-equipped as everyone else when it comes to predicting or preventing the many risks associated with childbirth. Some midwives were thought to be gifted with special knowledge passed down through generations, but that knowledge was often based more on guesswork than real medical understanding. Herbal remedies, often mixed with superstition, might ease some of your discomfort, but they certainly won't guarantee your safety or the health of your baby. And what about the baby? As your belly grows, you find yourself worrying about the little one inside you. If you're lucky enough to feel some movement, it might give you a momentary sense of relief. But then comes the worry. Is the baby developing properly? Without any of the tests or technology that modern women take for granted, there's no way to know. If you're lucky, the baby might kick or move in ways that assure you they're still alive. But the silence of the womb is deafening, and you're left to wonder whether everything is truly okay. Of course, the fear of stillbirth is always there. In medieval times, the rates of stillbirth were incredibly high, and women often had to endure multiple pregnancies, with no guarantees that any of them would result in a live birth. The knowledge of fetal development was minimal, and much of what women knew came from the occasional birth story or folk tales passed down from older generations. These stories were often filled with magic and divine intervention, things like charms or prayers to ensure a safe delivery. It wasn't uncommon for a woman to carry a small amulet or talisman to ward off bad luck. You may be doing everything you can to stay healthy, but there's always the nagging knowledge that there's nothing you can truly control. The risk of a miscarriage is a constant specter that haunts your every movement, every heavy task you take on. It's said that some women who experienced a miscarriage went through intense emotional and social consequences as well. Many believed that losing a child was a sign of a curse or divine displeasure, and the social stigma could be just as painful as the physical loss. In a tight-knit medieval village, the gossip about a failed pregnancy could spread like wildfire. Now, if the pregnancy is going smoothly, there's the looming dread of childbirth itself. The very thought of it is enough to make anyone anxious. Childbirth in the medieval period was notoriously dangerous, with mortality rates much higher than today. Historians still argue whether this was mainly due to the lack of sanitation, the absence of skilled doctors, or simply because the process itself was too risky. But what is certain is that women feared childbirth. They feared it because they knew it could kill them, and they feared it because they knew it could kill their babies. Even if you manage to make it through the pregnancy, there's still no guarantee that you'll survive the birth. The risks of hemorrhaging, infection, and complications like breech birth were all too real, and without any real understanding of how to manage these issues, you're left to face them alone. The midwives, no matter how experienced, had limited means at their disposal. In most cases, they relied on traditional practices, some of which were downright dangerous. Some historians argue that medieval midwives may have exacerbated complications by using instruments like forceps, or even attempting to assist the birth in ways that caused more harm than good. At this point, your only hope is that you'll survive the birth, but even that is a big if. You can only take each day as it comes and pray that you'll be one of the lucky ones who makes it through. The days continue to drag on as your pregnancy progresses, and by now, the tension between hope and fear has become unbearable. The physical toll on your body is undeniable. Your body is an entirely different shape, and you can feel the weight of the baby pressing down on your bladder and your muscles. Every step you take is a reminder of how much your body is working, and how much you're sacrificing just to get through each day. The discomfort is constant, and yet, there's no respite. Your legs ache from the constant work, and your lower back is killing you. As the pregnancy advances, so does the constant pressure that builds within your body. You're growing rounder, your stomach pushing outward, but with it, your other organs seem to get pushed aside. It's not uncommon to feel dizzy or lightheaded, especially after standing for too long or working too hard. But there's no real time to slow down. If you did, who would take care of the chores? There's always work to be done. One thing you probably notice now is how people seem to treat you differently. You're still expected to work, of course, but you're also getting more attention from the villagers. Some show you sympathy, some caution you about what to avoid, and others even give advice on how to handle your pregnancy. Often contradictory advice, mind you. Someone might suggest you eat more or rest more. Another will tell you not to be lazy and keep up with your daily tasks. In this world, there's no middle ground. There's no room for a mother-to-be to rest without feeling guilty for not contributing. Your family is starting to pay more attention to you as well. You probably don't have the luxury of medical professionals checking in regularly, but maybe your mother or grandmother is keeping an eye on you. They may try to soothe your aches with herbal remedies, such as infusions of calming herbs, but most of these remedies, while soothing, aren't scientifically proven to help much. Despite their best intentions, these home remedies do little to ease the growing burden on your body. But what else is there to do? No one knows how to properly care for a pregnant woman in this day and age, so everyone relies on tradition, on what was passed down from mother to daughter. It's a gamble, hoping that these practices will work for you, just like they worked for the generations before you. Of course, pregnancy in this time doesn't come with the modern conveniences we take for granted. No prenatal vitamins, no knowledge about the importance of folic acid or calcium for fetal development. Back then, it was just about surviving, getting through the 9 months, and hoping that the baby inside you would survive the birth. There was no screening for potential birth defects, and no real understanding of how diseases could affect the baby. Some women might have had the fortune of a relatively smooth pregnancy, but for many others, complications were an unavoidable reality. And then, there's the ever-present fear of miscarriage. The idea that, after all this time, all your hopes could be dashed in a moment is something that every pregnant woman of the time had to live with. Miscarriages were not uncommon in medieval times, and the medical explanations for them were sparse at best. If you lost the baby early, people would likely whisper that it was a curse, an omen, or just bad luck. There were no comforting words from a doctor telling you it wasn't your fault. It was simply something that happened, and you were left to pick up the pieces on your own. Even if your pregnancy is progressing without issue, there's still the underlying fear of childbirth. Childbirth in medieval times was considered one of the most dangerous and life-threatening events a woman could face. With no understanding of sanitation or the importance of sterile environments, the odds of developing an infection were high. Any small mistake during the birth could lead to a deadly infection or uncontrollable bleeding. In fact, many women died from what we would now consider preventable causes, such as puerperal fever or sepsis after giving birth. But you try to push that fear aside for now. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome. All you can do is prepare as best as you can for the arrival of your baby, hoping that you'll be one of the lucky ones who survive the ordeal. You might start making plans for the birth. Perhaps you've already selected the midwife who will assist you, or maybe you're still considering the best place for your labor to take place. Most likely, it will happen in your own home with a midwife and perhaps a few relatives to support you. But there are no guarantees. The birth could go smoothly, or it could end in tragedy. Your thoughts often wander to the future. What if you survive the birth, but something goes wrong afterward? What if the baby doesn't survive, or you suffer complications in the days after delivery? The stories of women who died from the childbed fever are all too real, and they haunt your thoughts as you prepare for the big day. The days are long, and your body is exhausted, but you keep going. You know there's no other option. In a medieval village, there's a deep sense of fatalism when it comes to pregnancy and childbirth. Everyone understands that there are no guarantees, and that each pregnancy carries a risk. Women, especially those who've already had children, are often just trying to get through the process without losing their own lives or their baby's life. And if you're lucky enough to have a healthy baby at the end of all this, then you can count yourself among the fortunate few. But until that day comes, you'll continue on working, waiting, praying. With every passing day, the pressure mounts, but you still carry on, hoping that your strength will carry you through. The days are slipping away now, each one bringing you closer to the moment of truth. Your body is a strange mix of fatigue and anticipation, like an old carriage carrying a heavy load over a rough road. The constant ache in your back, the pressure in your pelvis. It all reminds you that this isn't just a waiting game. Your body is preparing for something momentous, and you can feel it with every passing day. The villagers can tell that you're nearing your time. There are the sympathetic glances, the hushed voices behind your back, the well-meaning advice from every corner. Everyone has their theories about what will make the birth easier or safer. Some might tell you to drink a certain herbal tea or make a sacrifice to a local saint. Others will recommend rest, though rest seems as elusive as the cure to the common cold in your world. You can't rest. There's too much to do. And so, you carry on, but with the knowledge that in a matter of days you'll face the trial of labor. The thought sends a ripple of fear through your gut, but there's no escape from it. It's not like you have much of a choice anyway. In a medieval village, there are no hospitals, no modern birthing rooms. You'll likely give birth in your own home, perhaps in a room near the hearth where warmth and light are abundant. It might seem comforting, but there's no sterile environment to ease your nerves. The floor is cold, the blankets are well worn, and the room is filled with the buzz of anticipation. Your midwife will arrive, bringing with her whatever tools she believes will help you through the birth. Mostly rudimentary instruments, herbs, and perhaps a bit of divine protection in the form of prayers or charms. But as comforting as it may sound, the reality of childbirth in the medieval period is far less romantic. The risk of infection was ever present, and women were often not even aware of it. Things like clean hands or sterilized tools weren't even on the radar. The act of giving birth at its core was a dangerous gamble, even for women who had given birth before. The birth could go well or it could turn disastrous. You might have heard the rumors about women who gave birth to stillborn children, or worse, mothers who never woke after giving birth. The village elder might have even told you that these deaths were a result of the curse of some ill-tempered spirit or an angry god. But deep down, you understand that this is simply part of the harsh reality of life in a medieval village. It's not magic at all. It's just the brutality of the unknown. But you can't focus on that right now. You have to push those thoughts aside and trust that your body will do what it needs to do. You pray for strength. You pray for survival. The preparations are made, and all that's left now is to wait. But with each passing hour, you can feel the tension mounting. Every little cramp, every dull ache in your abdomen makes you wonder, is it starting? Is it time? Labor is something that's been passed down through stories, passed from mother to daughter, but no one can truly prepare you for the unknown. The pain, the fear, the uncertainty. It all looms ahead of you, and there's no avoiding it. The signs of labor are subtle at first. Perhaps your contractions start as a light cramping in your lower abdomen, a rhythmic tightening that you can easily dismiss. But as they become more intense, you start to realize that this is it, the moment you've been dreading and anticipating. The midwife will come, if she hasn't already, and you'll be surrounded by your family. All eyes on you as you go through the motions of bringing new life into the world. But with all the anticipation, there's a stark truth that you can't ignore. The danger is far from over. While you may make it through the initial stages of labor, there's still the matter of the birth itself. The process is long, often grueling, and filled with the unknown. It's said that some women who gave birth without assistance were forced to rely on their own strength, gritting their teeth through the pain while they delivered their babies alone, often in a state of delirium. For many, this was the only way to survive, but the toll it took on the body was immense. The fear of infection looms large during childbirth. In a world without antibiotics, even the smallest scratch or tear could lead to life-threatening infection. The midwife, if she's skilled, might attempt to stitch you up, but even her hands may be contaminated with dirt or germs from the surrounding environment. No one truly understands how infections spread or what measures could prevent them, so it's a game of chance. If you're lucky, you'll escape with your life. But if not, you risk being one of the many women who didn't survive childbirth. There's also the fear of hemorrhaging, a terrifyingly common complication in medieval childbirth. Without knowledge of blood loss or the ability to monitor how much blood is being lost during the birth, it was nearly impossible to prevent or manage. The midwife might try to stem the bleeding, but her knowledge is limited, and her resources are few. It's not uncommon for women to pass away in the hours or days after the birth from excessive bleeding, a fate that was all too common in medieval times. But through it all, you hold on. The labor progresses, the contractions intensify, and you push through it, despite the exhaustion, despite the fear. It is, in a strange way, a testament to the strength of women. We endure even when we know the risks because that's what we've always done. We survive. We bring life into the world, even when the odds are stacked against us. And finally, the moment comes. With one last push, the baby is born. Your heart races as the world goes silent for a brief second, and then you hear it, the cry of your newborn. It's a sound that fills you with overwhelming relief and joy. You've made it, but there's still the matter of the afterbirth and the complications that can arise in those final moments. But for now, in this fleeting moment, you've survived. You've given birth. The world feels surreal as you hold your newborn baby, a tiny creature now entrusted to your care. You've survived the impossible, but the battle isn't over yet. Your body, battered and exhausted, is still reeling from the immense ordeal of childbirth. Despite the joy of holding your child, you're acutely aware of the risks that still linger, risks that modern women can avoid but which were ever present in the medieval world. The weeks after birth were a fragile time, perhaps even more dangerous than the birth itself. Your body is still in recovery. The bleeding continues, and while it's expected, there's always the lingering threat of infection. The midwife, if she's still around, will likely offer advice on how to care for yourself and your baby. She might even bring you herbs to help with healing or tea to encourage lactation, but there's little more that can be done to ensure your recovery. The truth is, your survival now depends on your strength and the ability of your body to heal itself. If an infection sets in, or if you hemorrhage again, there's no one who can truly help. You'll have to rely on your own resilience and the care of those around you. Your family will help as much as they can. The new baby will be passed around, cooed over by relatives who are eager to see the newest member of the village. The grandmother might give you a few pieces of advice on how to care for your newborn, even though, in truth, there's not much medical wisdom to pass along. You're left to figure out the basics. How to nurse, how to soothe the baby when it cries, how to ensure the baby's survival in a world where infant mortality is high. The joy of having a child, however, doesn't erase the harsh reality of medieval life. There's a reason why infant mortality rates were so high during this time. Babies were vulnerable to countless illnesses, many of which were completely preventable with modern medical knowledge. In medieval villages, a baby might succumb to anything from a simple fever to malnutrition, or worse, an infection passed on from an unsanitary environment. You might see other mothers who have lost their infants, and those experiences will forever haunt you. Many women had to bury their children before they had the chance to grow. You might even worry if your own child is strong enough to survive. The emotional weight is heavy, but there's little room for such concerns. There's still work to be done, and as a new mother, your duties aren't finished. There's a constant need to ensure the survival of both you and your baby. You might feel a deep sense of obligation to get back to your daily chores, even though every muscle in your body aches. Your newborn needs care, of course, but there are still fires to stoke, crops to tend, and animals to feed. The pressure to return to your labor is relentless. Perhaps you can rely on others, your mother, a sister, or a close friend, but that won't always be enough. The work of a medieval woman never truly ends. As you move through these days, trying to balance the demands of motherhood with the demands of survival, you can't help but think about the future. Will you be able to raise your child in such a harsh environment? Will your baby grow up to live a long life? Or will it too fall victim to the many dangers that lurk in the world around you? These questions plague your thoughts as you nurse your child, clean your home, and tend to the garden. There's no time to rest, no time to let your body fully recover. Your baby depends on you, and the village needs you to contribute. In a sense, motherhood in this time is both a blessing and a curse, a gift of new life, but also a heavy burden of responsibility. For now, you'll hold your baby close, listening to their soft breathing, feeling their tiny hand grasp your finger. It's a beautiful moment, one that gives you hope and reminds you that despite everything, life goes on. But you know that tomorrow there will be more work to do, more risks to face. You can't afford to rest, not now. The village will still expect you to contribute, and your family still needs you. But there's a part of you that treasures these quiet moments, when the world slows down, and it's just you and your newborn, wrapped in the warmth of each other's presence. Despite the challenges, you take comfort in the knowledge that this is the beginning of something new, a new chapter in your life and in the life of your child. You're a mother now, part of a long line of women who have faced the hardships of medieval motherhood and survived. Perhaps that's the most profound thing of all, that women have always managed to survive, even when the odds were against them. It's in your blood, your heritage. You will survive, and you will raise your child, even in the harshest of circumstances. But as the days go on, the fear of the unknown doesn't entirely leave you. You will always wonder if the baby is strong enough to face the dangers of the world. Will the illness that takes so many others reach your doorstep? Will you be one of the lucky few who get to see their children grow into adulthood? Or will your child too face the cruelty of a world that doesn't offer much protection? These questions linger in your mind as you move through the mundane tasks of your daily life. For now, you can only do what you must. Care for your baby, keep your family safe, and hope that your own body heals enough to carry on. The medieval world offers little in the way of certainty, but it offers resilience, the strength to endure, to continue, and to raise the next generation, despite all odds. The days are bleeding into each other now, a blur of feeding, soothing, and maintaining the life that surrounds you. As the days turn into weeks, there's one thing you notice with growing clarity. The village is never quiet. Even in your moments of rest, you hear the distant clanging of the blacksmith's hammer, the low hum of workers in the fields, the chatter of women gathering herbs or hauling water from the well. But the sounds of your life now center around your newborn. The cries, the gurgles, the helpless little noises that are your constant reminder of both the fragility and the hope that your child represents. You've started to regain some of your strength, though it's a slow process. Your body, though still aching, is learning to function again, though with more caution than before. Your body's rhythm has changed in subtle ways, shifts that are noticed in the way you move, the way you breathe, even in how your skin feels against the fabric of your worn clothing. The fatigue from childbirth never truly goes away, but gradually, it becomes a quiet hum at the back of your mind rather than an overwhelming force. But no amount of rest can shield you from the brutal realities of life in a medieval village. The work of survival continues, and no one, not even a new mother, can avoid it. You may have just given birth, but there are still fires to tend, food to gather, and duties to fulfill. Perhaps you've been able to rely on others, your own mother, sisters, or friends, but for the most part, you are expected to carry on as if nothing has changed. And in many ways, nothing has. The villagers expect you to contribute, and your role as a mother doesn't exempt you from the endless cycle of labor. There is no time to rest, no time to heal fully. In fact, the very notion of rest feels like a luxury in this world. Every task you perform, whether it's preparing food, gathering firewood, or helping with the animals, reminds you that you cannot afford to take a break. You may be a mother now, but the work of life doesn't stop for anyone. The endless physical strain is something you've come to accept, though the toll it takes on you is becoming clearer with each passing day. And then there's the baby. You've learned to soothe them, to understand their needs in the most primal way. The act of breastfeeding is both a relief and a struggle. On one hand, it's a comfort, a moment of connection between you and the child that you brought into the world. But on the other hand, it's demanding, draining you of energy, and leaving you feeling as though you're being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. Your body is still recovering from the exhausting ordeal of childbirth, and every feeding reminds you that there is still work to be done. Not only for your baby's survival, but for your own as well. The constant pressure of motherhood is relentless. The villagers, with their ever-watchful eyes, are quick to offer advice, whether solicited or not. Everyone has an opinion on how you should care for your newborn, and most of it is rooted in superstition or outdated beliefs. One woman might recommend a special herb that will soothe the baby's soul, while another insists that you must let the child cry to build its strength. Some say that the newborn's first steps must be blessed by the local priest, while others warn you against certain foods that might bring misfortune. It's exhausting to sift through all the advice, but in the end, you make your choices based on what feels right, based on your intuition and the guidance of the midwife who has helped you through the most critical moments. The first months of a baby's life are delicate. Every cough, every sneeze, every slight change in their breathing sends a shiver of worry through you. Illness is one of the greatest dangers to infants, and even the slightest fever could signal a death sentence in the medieval world. You try your best to protect your child, but there's little that can be done. You wash your hands as best as you can, although clean water is hard to come by, and you make sure the baby stays warm, although there's always the risk of sudden chill or infection from the surrounding environment. The knowledge that something as simple as a cold could turn deadly is a constant, nagging fear. Beyond the physical care, there's also the emotional strain of motherhood in these harsh conditions. You are always watching, always waiting. The village is filled with stories of women who lost their children to illness or accident, or who themselves died in childbirth. These stories are whispered behind closed doors, murmured over the hearth fires, and they become part of the fabric of your daily life. You know that the survival of both yourself and your child is far from guaranteed. The thought gnaws at you, especially during those long nights when the baby is restless, and sleep feels like a distant memory. Yet, amid all the fear and exhaustion, there are moments of sweetness. The way your baby's small hand curls around your finger, the way their gaze softens when they're near you, the gentle cooing sound they make when they fall asleep on your chest. These moments offer brief respite from the constant demands of survival, reminding you that despite everything, there is beauty in this new chapter of your life. You treasure these fleeting seconds, knowing how precious and fragile they are. It's a small solace in a world that gives little in the way of comfort. You've heard the old women in the village talk about the future, about how your child will grow up to inherit your strength, your resilience, and your place in the community. And while the thought brings a flicker of hope, it also reminds you that life is cyclical. You will pass on the legacy of survival, the legacy of motherhood, to this new generation, just as your mother did before you. But for now, you can only focus on what's directly in front of you. Your child, the life you've brought into the world, and the long journey that still lies ahead. The days go on, filled with a mixture of joy and hardship. The village continues its daily rhythm, its people continuing their ceaseless labor. As you go through your days, always keeping one eye on the baby, you realize that this is your life now. The fear, the uncertainty, and the pain, these are the constants. But so too is the strength, the resilience, and the unbreakable bond you share with your child. And that, in the end, is what keeps you going. Life continues in its unrelenting pace, a cycle of work and care that never truly stops. With the baby now a few months old, you find that your body, though still not fully healed, is beginning to adjust to the constant demands of motherhood. You've learned to adapt to the aches in your muscles, the exhaustion that hangs over you like a thick fog, and the constant rhythm of feeding and soothing. Every day feels like a tightrope walk between survival and breaking down, but somehow you manage to keep going. But there's a growing sense of unease. The weight of responsibility has settled onto your shoulders like a heavy cloak, and you feel the pull of your duties growing stronger with every passing day. The tasks you once performed effortlessly now seem insurmountable. Gathering firewood, grinding grain, tending to the animals. It's a juggling act that never ends, and each moment you spend away from the baby brings a new level of guilt. You know your child depends on you, yet there's so much work to be done. In the village, every woman is expected to pull her weight, and being a new mother doesn't exempt you from the burden. There's the constant pressure to be productive, to keep up with the relentless demands of life in a medieval village. You might have hoped that motherhood would bring a few weeks of respite, but instead, it only seems to add to the workload. Your husband, while perhaps supportive, isn't always around. He's working the land or helping with other tasks, and there are times when you feel entirely alone in your efforts. The village women might offer help, but it's often in the form of advice rather than practical assistance. And while some people might step in to help with the baby, the reality is that the community isn't always as kind as you'd like it to be. The struggle for survival doesn't stop for anyone, and in a way, motherhood has become another part of that struggle. It's not just about caring for your child, it's about ensuring that both of you can make it through another day. You find yourself constantly balancing the needs of your newborn with the demands of your environment. The weather may change, the crops may fail, or the animals may become sick, and each of these challenges adds another layer of stress to your already fragile existence. The future is uncertain, and while you try to focus on the here and now, you can't help but wonder what tomorrow might bring. There's also the ever-present fear of illness. In a time when medicine is rudimentary at best, the slightest change in your child's health can send you spiraling into panic. A cough, a fever, a rash. These are not just symptoms of a cold or a mild illness. They could be the early signs of something much worse. Infant mortality rates in medieval villages were tragically high, and it's not a fact that you can simply ignore. You've heard the stories of women who have lost their children to fever or illness, and you know the reality of it all. Your heart aches every time you see the baby showing any signs of discomfort, and you're left wondering if there's anything more you could have done to protect them. But there's no time for indecision. Every moment spent worrying is a moment taken away from action. The village relies on you to keep up with your work, and there's no room for weakness. You are expected to be strong, to carry on, and to ensure the survival of your family. Even with the baby in your arms, you must continue to tend to the animals, help with the crops, and keep the fire burning. Every task is a reminder that your life is not your own. It belongs to the survival of the community, to the endless cycle of work that defines your existence. As the weeks turn into months, your bond with the baby deepens, but so does the exhaustion. The joy of motherhood is tempered by the constant strain of labor, and you find yourself wondering when, or if, there will be a break. The idea of rest seems like a distant dream, something other women talk about but never seem to experience. Every day feels like a battle against the elements, against fatigue, against the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Yet, even in the midst of this struggle, there are moments of tenderness. The baby's smile, the way they snuggle into your chest when they're tired, the soft coos that break through the heavy silence of your days. These small moments are what keep you going. They are reminders that, despite everything, life continues. Despite the hardships, there is still beauty, still love, still connection. These moments offer you something that no amount of physical labor or hardship can take away. It's these quiet, fleeting glimpses of joy that give you the strength to continue, to fight through the exhaustion, and to face whatever challenges lie ahead. You're starting to understand what it means to be a mother in this world, to carry the weight of your child's future on your shoulders while balancing the unending demands of life. It's not easy, it's not fair, but it's life, and it's the only life you know. As you look into your baby's eyes, you see a future that is uncertain but filled with possibility. You've made it this far, and somehow you'll make it through the days ahead, too. The journey of motherhood is long, but it is also one of the most profound you'll ever undertake. No matter how difficult the path becomes, you will always have your love for your child to carry you through. The days continue to stretch before you, each one a mix of endless labor and fleeting moments of connection. The baby is growing slowly but surely, its small cries becoming more purposeful, its gaze sharper, more aware of the world around them. You find yourself wondering what they will become, who they will grow into. The possibilities are endless, but so too are the dangers. You're still acutely aware of the fragility of life in a medieval village, where one misstep can lead to disaster. But with each passing day, you are also learning more about what it takes to be a mother in this time and place. The act of care becomes second nature to you, even as it drains every ounce of your energy. The constant act of feeding, soothing, and protecting has become your new rhythm, and while it's exhausting, there is a quiet pride in knowing you're doing your best. But even as you adjust to your new reality, there are still those moments when you wonder if you'll ever have time to truly rest. It's hard to remember what life was like before motherhood, before the demands of this new life took over every corner of your existence. The village continues its unyielding pace. The men are still in the fields, the women are still grinding grain and tending to animals, and you are still carrying the weight of the home on your shoulders. Your husband helps when he can, but his duties in the fields or with the animals often pull him away. You, on the other hand, are the glue that holds everything together, the one who is expected to maintain the home, care for the child, and ensure the survival of your family. It's a role that, in many ways, feels isolating. The demands are constant, and there is little room for reprieve. It's not that the villagers don't care. They do in their own way. They offer advice when they can, share what little food they have, and offer a helping hand when the workload gets too heavy. But there is an unspoken understanding in the village that everyone must contribute. No one is exempt, not even mothers. And as much as you might wish for someone to take over for just a few hours, you know that this is not how the world works. The burden is yours, and you must bear it. The relentless cycle of work is a constant companion in your life. Even as you care for your child, you find yourself tending to the fires, gathering water, and preparing food. There is no time to rest, no time to pause and reflect on the beauty of the world around you. The days blur together, one indistinguishable from the next. And yet, amid this exhausting routine, you have moments where you steal a few seconds to sit with your child, to marvel at how much they've grown, how much they've learned. The baby's first smile, the first time they make eye contact. It's a small victory in a world that offers so few. But there is also a creeping worry, a fear that lingers in the back of your mind. The world is harsh, and you've seen it firsthand. You've seen children grow sick and die, seen mothers mourn for their lost little ones. Infant mortality rates are tragically high in your village, and every cough, every fever, every small sign of illness sends a jolt of panic through you. You try not to let it consume you, but it's hard not to feel like a mother's worst enemy is time. You wonder how long you can keep your child safe in a world filled with so many dangers. And then there's the constant struggle with superstition and old beliefs. You've been warned against certain foods and practices, each piece of advice laden with centuries-old traditions that seem more about fear than wisdom. Some women swear by amulets to protect their children, while others insist that the baby's future depends on the precise alignment of the stars at birth. There are rumors of witches in the village, of curses that can be placed upon children, and you find yourself wondering if there's any truth to it all. The fear of the unknown runs deep in this world, and it's something you can't easily escape, no matter how hard you try. Yet, as the days pass and the baby grows stronger, you start to find a rhythm, a way to cope with the constant demands of motherhood. You become more adept at juggling the household tasks with the care of your child, finding moments of respite in the small victories of the day. Perhaps it's the brief moments of sleep when the baby finally dozes off, or the quiet chats with other mothers in the village, sharing stories of the ups and downs of life. These moments, though small, give you the strength to keep going. But the uncertainty is never far from your mind. You wonder what the future holds for your child. Will they grow up strong and healthy, or will they fall victim to the same harsh conditions that so many others have? Will they inherit your strength and resilience, or will they face challenges you can't even imagine? The questions are endless, and the fear of the unknown is always present. But despite everything, you push forward. There is no other choice. Your child needs you, and you will continue to fight for their survival no matter what. The village continues to hum with its own rhythm, the seasons changing, the work never ending. You find yourself looking toward the future, wondering what it will bring. Will life get easier? Will your child grow into a strong, healthy adult who can take over the responsibilities you've carried? Or will they, like so many others, face an uncertain fate? For now, you take it one day at a time, trusting that you can weather whatever comes your way. After all, this is your life now, the life of a mother in a medieval village. It's hard, it's brutal, but it's also filled with moments of profound love, moments that remind you why you keep going despite the endless work and the overwhelming fear. The seasons begin to shift, and with them comes a new set of challenges. The weather turns colder, the wind sharper, and the once bountiful fields start to show signs of the harsh winter to come. The villagers are busy preparing for the frost, collecting firewood, preserving food, and making sure the animals are ready for the cold months ahead. The work, never ending, becomes even more urgent. You feel the pressure as the baby grows stronger, more mobile, yet still incredibly vulnerable. The cold is a constant worry. Will the baby survive the chill of the coming months? The heating of the home, a fire that flickers in the hearth, is all you have to keep the worst of it at bay. As a new mother, you've learned quickly that survival isn't just about food and shelter. It's about finding ways to protect your child from the harshness of the world. Winter brings its own set of dangers: frostbite, sickness, and the ever-present threat of starvation if the crops don't hold up. But even as you prepare, there is a haunting realization that you are at the mercy of nature's whims. There's nothing you can do to truly control the cold, and every new day brings the fear that you won't have enough to make it through. Your hands, cracked and raw from the cold, seem to take on a life of their own as they work tirelessly. Each morning you rise early, just as the sun is beginning to peek over the horizon, to gather firewood and tend to the animals. By the time you return to the house, the baby is awake, ready to feed. You do your best to give your child the warmth and comfort they need, but your body is weary, and the pressure of maintaining a home weighs heavily on your shoulders. Despite the cold, you continue to care for the animals, prepare food, and manage the household, all while carrying the weight of motherhood. The fear of an illness striking your child grows stronger. You see others in the village become sick, a constant reminder of how fragile life can be. The poor medical care available means that any ailment could prove deadly. A simple cough could become a fever, and a fever could become something worse. You've heard the stories of mothers who have lost children to sickness, and it lingers in the back of your mind, a shadow that never quite goes away. In the midst of the increasing workload, you've also noticed a shift in the way the other women in the village treat you. At first, they were friendly, offering advice and assistance when needed. But now that your child is a few months old, their opinions seem to shift. You hear whispers behind your back, Comments about how you should be doing more, how you should be stronger, and how you should be able to handle it all. It's a cruel reminder that, in this world, no one is allowed to show weakness. The women around you expect you to be an unflappable figure of strength, someone who never falters. There's a pressure that builds as you try to live up to these expectations. It's not just about surviving. It's about thriving in a world that expects so much from you. The village doesn't make room for imperfection. If your house isn't clean enough, if the fire isn't hot enough, if your baby cries too much, then you're judged. And as a new mother, you feel it acutely. The judgment weighs on you like an invisible hand, pressing down on your chest. You want to be everything everyone expects. But the truth is that you're barely keeping it all together. In those quiet moments when you're alone, perhaps with the baby asleep in your arms or nestled against your chest, you allow yourself to pause. Just for a moment, you let the exhaustion wash over you. The weight of the world seems to fade, and for a second, it's just you and your child, surviving together in a world that seems indifferent to your struggles. But the quiet moments are fleeting. The demands of the day always return, relentless and unforgiving. And so, you keep moving forward one day at a time, doing the best you can with the little you have. You gather what firewood you can, pray the food stores last through the winter, and hope that somehow, your child will survive the bitter cold. Despite the overwhelming pressures, there is love in every action, in every sacrifice. Even when you're at your lowest, you find ways to give more, to fight harder. The strength of motherhood is forged in these moments, and even as the cold winds howl outside, you find warmth in the simple, fierce love you feel for your child. The baby grows stronger with each day, their cries becoming louder, their movements more purposeful. You can see their strength already, and it fills you with hope. There's so much that is out of your control, but in these small victories you take solace. You know that you can't protect your child from everything, but you can do your best, and that's what you will continue to do, no matter how harsh the world becomes. The village continues to prepare for the coming winter, and you do the same. The work never stops. The world outside grows colder, but within the walls of your home, there is warmth, if only for a moment. And in that warmth, you find the strength to face the day, to keep moving forward. For your child, for your family, for survival, winter settles in fully now, bringing with it a sense of unrelenting cold. The winds howl through the cracks in the walls, and the snow piles high, covering the village in a blanket of white. You feel it in your bones, the chill that seems to seep into every corner of your existence. The warmth of the fire is your only respite, but even it feels insufficient against the vast, encroaching cold. You bundle your baby in layers of wool, trying to protect them from the biting air. But even in this, you can't escape the harsh realities of your situation. There's only so much you can do. The village has become quieter in the winter months, the usual bustle of daily work slowing down. The fields are barren, the animals huddle close to their shelters, and the sounds of laughter or chatter are muffled by the thick snow. It's a time of waiting, of surviving, of enduring. People are more likely to get sick in the winter, and you've heard rumors that the village healer has been struggling to keep up with the increasing number of ill. There's little she can do beyond herbal remedies and rest, but even that can't always stave off the worst. You spend your days indoors, working to keep your home as warm as possible. The firewood you've carefully stored is being burned faster than you'd like, and you find yourself rationing the flames, allowing them to smolder rather than burn brightly. Every time you send your husband out to gather more wood, you feel a pang of guilt, knowing that the supply is limited and you can't afford to be careless. You hope the weather will warm soon, but you know that the snow could last for months. The months stretch ahead of you like an endless expanse of white, cold, and silence. The baby continues to grow, their tiny fingers grasping at anything within reach, their eyes wide with curiosity. There's a fleeting moment of joy in those small developments, but they're quickly overshadowed by the constant worry. Is the baby warm enough? Are they eating enough? Will they survive this winter? You try to push the doubts away, focusing instead on what you can do to keep them comfortable and safe. But there's no denying that the fear is always there, lurking in the back of your mind. The women in the village continue to share their wisdom, though it seems more practical than before. Advice on keeping your home warm, on avoiding frostbite, on feeding your family with the little you have. There's a shared understanding that survival is the priority, and the sense of community grows stronger as you all face the harshness of winter together. But even in this shared struggle, you feel isolated. No one else can feel what you feel. No one else can experience the sleepless nights, the constant exhaustion, the overwhelming fear. It's as though you are in your own private battle, one that no one else can truly understand. There are small comforts to be found in the village's rituals, in the shared moments of solidarity. Every evening, women gather in each other's homes, huddling around fires, knitting blankets, or telling stories. These brief interludes provide small moments of relief, but they're fleeting. Soon it's back to work, back to the endless tasks of survival. There's a quiet recognition among the women that they all carry the same burden. They understand the exhaustion, the fears, the pressure, but they also know that there's no room for weakness. It's a silent pact. They all must keep moving, no matter how difficult it gets. The cold continues to grip the village, and you find yourself growing weary of the endless struggle. The days seem to stretch longer in winter, each one feeling like a battle just to make it through. The weight of it all begins to feel unbearable at times. You can only endure so much, and yet there's no choice but to press on. The survival instinct is strong in you, and it drives you forward even as your body aches and your spirit falters. There are moments, however, when the baby offers you a small reprieve. A soft coo, a tiny giggle, a touch of their hand against your skin. These moments are brief, but they remind you of why you continue. They are the light that cuts through the dark, the warmth that fights against the cold. They remind you that, even in the face of overwhelming hardship, there is still love, still hope, still reason to keep going. But then, reality returns, and the cold once again settles in. The hearth grows dim, the food stores dwindle, and the fear of illness lingers in the back of your mind. You can't escape it, no matter how hard you try. You pray for a change, for the weather to warm, for the pressure to ease. But, as always, you must wait. And in the waiting, you continue to fight, to keep your home warm, your child safe, and your family surviving. Winter is the season of endurance. It is not kind, nor forgiving, but it is necessary. And as much as you hate it, you accept it because there is no choice. There is only the fight to survive, to endure, to persevere. Each day that you make it through, you've won. And in the smallest victories, like the soft smile of your baby, the warmth of the fire on your face, or the comforting presence of other women around you, you find the strength to keep moving forward. Spring finally breaks the long, icy hold of winter, though the transition is far from graceful. The thaw is slow, and the heavy mud that coats the ground makes every step feel like a struggle. It's a season of hope, but also of great uncertainty. The snow has melted, and while the sun makes a hesitant appearance, it's still too early to declare that the danger has passed. There's a lingering chill in the air that nips at your skin, a reminder that winter isn't quite done with you yet. The promise of warmer days doesn't erase the hardships of the previous months. The cold has taken its toll, not just physically, but mentally as well. Your body feels drained, and your mind, often clouded by fatigue, struggles to hold on to optimism. The winter has stretched longer than expected, and now you feel the weight of the past few months settling in. You've done your best to endure, to protect your child and your home. But as spring comes, it's impossible to ignore the lingering effects of the harsh season. Your hands are raw from working in the cold, and your back aches from the endless lifting and carrying. The baby, though still fragile, seems to be growing stronger each day. Their cries are more frequent now, their movements more determined. You hold them close, watching with a mixture of pride and worry as they continue to grow. But there's still fear in your heart. The cold may have passed, but the dangers of this new season remain. Crops are slow to grow, animals are still in recovery from the bitter winter, and sickness is still a constant concern. The change of season doesn't bring immediate relief. It's a slow, delicate process that requires patience and vigilance. The village is beginning to stir again. The men go out to work the fields, The women start planting and tending to gardens, and the air is filled with the smell of fresh earth and the sound of birds returning. Yet, there's an underlying tension. You've heard that famine can strike even in the warm months if the harvests don't come in properly. And with the poor soil conditions and exhausted land, there's no guarantee that things will improve. You try to stay hopeful, but there's a constant undercurrent of fear running through you. What if the crops don't grow? What if the food stores run out again? The work doesn't stop, though. There's always something to be done, and no matter how tired you are, you push through. Your hands are constantly busy. Sewing, mending, gathering, planting, and your mind is never at rest. The baby keeps you busy as well, requiring your constant attention. And yet, there's a strange solace in this unending cycle. There is no room for reflection, no time for worry to fester. The demands of survival force you into action, and in that you find purpose. Your relationship with the other women in the village is also shifting. The shared hardships of winter have brought you closer, but there's a new sense of competition now that the weather has warmed. Everyone is vying for the best plots of land, the finest animals, the most fertile seeds. The women who once offered each other advice now keep a watchful eye on one another. And there's a tension in the air, even if no one openly speaks of it. No one wants to admit that they are struggling. The pressure to appear strong, to survive with grace, remains ever present. You've seen this dynamic shift before. In the winter months, when survival was the only goal, there was camaraderie, a shared understanding that everyone was just trying to make it through. But now, as the promise of a good harvest becomes more real, the desire for success, real or imagined, becomes more important than the bonds formed in hardship. There's a competition for resources, for recognition, for the future. And in that, there's a subtle, almost imperceptible erosion of the support you once felt from the other women. The competition makes everyone wary. It's no longer enough to survive. Now you must thrive. You must grow stronger, faster, better. And yet, even as this tension builds, you feel your own small victories. The baby's first words, their tiny hands grabbing onto the blankets you've spent hours weaving, their soft cooing as they fall asleep beside you. These are moments that make the daily toil worth it. Your heart swells with love and pride, even as the weight of everything else presses down. In these small, fleeting moments you find peace. Even in the midst of the competition, of the worry, and of the constant need to prove your strength, these little joys, these pieces of love and tenderness, make it all worth it. The village continues to work, the land continues to shift from the grip of winter, and you continue to do what you've always done. You survive. You push forward, driven by the unspoken force of motherhood, of the need to provide, of the love that binds you to your family. In the chaos, in the competition, and in the uncertainty of each season, you find a way to keep going. And with each passing day, you get just a little bit closer to the hope of a better tomorrow. As the days grow warmer, the land becomes more fertile, and the promise of a good harvest begins to take shape. You allow yourself to feel a flicker of hope, though you know better than to trust it too soon. The world is still a harsh place, and you still have many battles to face. But for now, you breathe in the air of the coming spring, and for a moment, the weight lifts. With the arrival of late spring, the village begins to breathe again. The fields, once barren and frozen, are now alive with activity. The sight of green shoots breaking through the soil brings a sense of renewed hope, though you can't quite shake the lingering doubts that have haunted you for months. The winter has left its mark, not just in the physical toll it's taken on your body, but in the mental exhaustion of never knowing if you would make it through. But the soil is warm now, and the trees are beginning to bloom. The world is moving forward, albeit cautiously. You can feel the rhythm of life picking up once again. The days are longer now, stretching out in front of you like an endless series of chores. There's always something that needs doing, planting, tending, gathering. You hardly have time to rest, your hands constantly moving, your mind always occupied with the endless tasks that need to be done. But there's a certain rhythm to it now, a flow that feels almost comforting. You've settled into this life of work, of survival, of caring for your family. There's no time for anything else, no space for contemplation or rest. You push forward not because you want to, but because you must. And yet, you can't ignore the subtle changes that are beginning to surface in your relationships with others. The women who once shared their knowledge so freely now keep to themselves, guarding their secrets, their recipes, their ways of doing things. The village has become more fragmented as resources grow scarce and competition increases. The tension that was palpable during the winter months now lingers in the background, only slightly muted by the warmer weather. You've heard whispers that the food stores are running low, that some of the crops aren't growing as well as they should, and that the harvest might not be enough to see everyone through the year. You've grown accustomed to these worries, to the constant fear of running out of food, running out of time. The idea that your survival depends on so many external factors is something you've had to come to terms with. But now, with the season turning, you can't help but wonder if it's all just a game of luck. You're at the mercy of the weather, the soil, the crops, and even the animals. There's always the chance that one bad season could undo everything, that the hard work of the past months could amount to nothing. You tell yourself to stay strong, to keep going, but it's hard to shake the feeling that you're just waiting for the next disaster to strike. The baby continues to grow, each day bringing new milestones. Their little hands are grabbing at everything, their legs kicking with the excitement of newfound movement. You can see the tiny spark of curiosity in their eyes as they begin to explore the world around them. There's a joy in these moments, a joy that brings you some respite from the constant fear. But that joy is tempered by the nagging worry that you may not be able to provide everything they need. Will you be able to feed them enough? Will the village's resources be enough to carry you through the rest of the year? These are questions that linger in your mind, unanswered, as you carry on with your day. You've started to notice the shift in the seasons more acutely now. The warmth of spring brings a brief sense of relief, but you know that summer will soon follow. The heat will become oppressive, and the danger of drought will hang over everything. The promise of bountiful crops can feel fragile, especially in a year like this. You've learned to be cautious with your hopes. It's not that you want to give up or surrender to the uncertainty, but you've lived through enough seasons of struggle to understand that nothing is guaranteed. All you can do is keep moving forward, one day at a time, one task at a time. But amidst all the work and the worry, there are moments when you allow yourself a brief pause. You sit on the edge of the doorframe, watching the sun set over the fields, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The air is still warm, and the birds are beginning their evening calls. The baby is asleep beside you, their soft breath a reminder that, for all the hardship, there is still beauty in the world. You hold on to these moments like lifelines, knowing that they are fleeting, but so incredibly precious. They remind you of the reason you push through the hard times, the reason you continue to fight. The village continues to bustle with life, the sounds of labor filling the air. The men and women work side by side, planting seeds, repairing tools, and preparing for what's to come. But the undercurrent of tension remains. You know that the village is vulnerable just as you are. The crops may not grow as expected, the rains may not come, and the animals may fall sick. The uncertainty is always present, but so is the will to survive. You push forward, even when you don't feel like it because there is no other choice. You continue to work with the other women in the village, though the once warm camaraderie is now tinged with a competitive edge. The need to survive, to protect your family, has made everyone more guarded, more protective of their resources. And yet, you can't afford to be too isolated. The support of others is still crucial. It's a delicate balance between self-preservation and community survival, and you tread carefully, always aware that the line between the two is thinner than you'd like. But even with the growing competition, there's still a sense of unity, of shared purpose. The village may be struggling, but you're all in this together. And no matter how difficult things become, there's a shared understanding that survival is a collective effort. The bonds of community are tested, but not broken. You continue to rely on each other, to share knowledge, to work together. It's not easy, but it's the only way to make it through. As the days grow longer and the work becomes more demanding, you find yourself caught in the ebb and flow of hope and fear. You push forward, knowing that each day is another step toward either success or failure. But you've come this far, and you're not about to give up now. The land may be uncertain, the future unpredictable, but you will keep going, for your family, for your child, for the hope of a better tomorrow. By the time summer arrives, the village is fully alive. The days stretch long under the relentless sun, the air thick and heavy with humidity. The work doesn't stop, of course. If anything, it intensifies. The harvest is still a few months away, but you have no time to rest. The crops must be tended to constantly, the animals watched carefully, and every inch of land utilized to its fullest. The heat, oppressive as it is, seems to bring a new sense of urgency to everything you do. It's a race against time. If the crops don't grow well now, you won't have enough food to survive through the winter. You've gotten used to the sweat trickling down your back as you work in the fields, the sunburn that tinges your skin red and raw. It's a constant battle against the elements. The heat, the dryness, the blisters on your hands from constant labor. They all become part of the daily struggle. But there's no room for complaint. Everyone is in the same position. If you stop for even a moment, the weeds will overtake the crops, or worse, a heat wave will destroy the delicate shoots that you've spent months nurturing. The stakes are too high for anything less than full commitment. As you bend over to tend to your crops, you're reminded of how far you've come since the cold days of winter. Your muscles are stronger now, your body more resilient to the demands of hard labor. And yet, there's an unshakable fatigue that sits in your bones. You work, you eat, you sleep, and then you do it all again. The monotony of it all is overwhelming, but it's also oddly comforting. There's a rhythm to it that feels predictable, even if the future is far from certain. The baby continues to grow, becoming more curious with each passing day. Their tiny hands are always reaching for something, their little legs kicking with excitement at the world around them. You can see them starting to understand the world in new ways. The look of wonder in their eyes as they watch the sun set over the horizon, or as they feel the breeze ruffle their hair, reminds you of what you're fighting for. Despite the exhaustion, despite the constant worry, there's still something magical about the way your child is growing and discovering the world. They are a light in the middle of all the chaos, a source of joy that makes every struggle worth it. But even as you find solace in these small moments, the reality of the village's situation continues to loom over you. The tension between the villagers has only intensified as resources grow more scarce. You overhear whispers of food shortages, of families going hungry, and of desperation creeping into the hearts of even the most stalwart individuals. It's impossible to ignore the fear that is beginning to take root. What happens if the crops fail? What if the harvest is insufficient to feed the village? And what if you're left with nothing, struggling to provide for your child, your family, and yourself? These questions linger in your mind, but you don't allow them to paralyze you. There's too much to do. You continue to work, to fight, to survive. The days are long and brutal, but you press on. The only option is to keep going. As much as you want to stop and rest, as much as your body screams for a break, there's simply no time. The stakes are too high. You've become accustomed to the heat, the constant sweat, and the exhaustion that seems to weigh down on you at all times. It's just another part of life now. You've learned to push through the discomfort, to ignore the fatigue, to focus solely on what needs to be done. There's no room for weakness, no time for hesitation. The world is unforgiving, and you have no choice but to keep going. The village itself seems to be caught in a delicate balance. There's still a sense of unity, but it's beginning to fray at the edges. Everyone is focused on their own survival, and though you continue to share what little knowledge you have with others, there's a growing sense of mistrust. People are no longer working together as closely as they once did. The desire to succeed, to feed one's family, has become more important than helping each other. The competition is subtle, but it's there, festering in the background. You notice the change in the women of the village most acutely. They no longer gather in the same way they did in the winter, sharing stories and offering advice. Now each woman is on her own, focused on her own work, her own needs. There's a wariness in the air, a sense that everyone is keeping secrets, guarding their resources closely. You try not to let it affect you, to stay focused on what matters, your family, your survival. But it's hard not to feel the weight of it, especially when you hear the sharp words and bitter glances exchanged between your neighbors. And yet, for all the competition and distrust, you continue to rely on one another. You still share meals when you can, still trade tips on the best ways to tend to the crops. There are moments of kindness, fleeting though they may be, but in the end, everyone is looking out for themselves. It's a necessary survival instinct, one that you understand all too well. The world is harsh, and the struggle is constant. But you still hold on to the belief that there's strength in community, even if it's starting to crack. As the days stretch on, the heat becomes unbearable at times. You long for the cool breezes of autumn, for the reprieve that the changing season promises. But there's no escaping the fact that summer is here, and with it, the intense pressure to secure enough food for the coming months. The sweat that coats your skin is a constant reminder of the battle you're fighting. You keep moving forward, your mind focused on the one thing that matters most: survival. The heat isn't just physical, it's mental too. The uncertainty weighs heavily on your mind. You can't stop wondering what the future holds. Will the harvest be enough? Will you make it through another winter? There's no answer, not yet. But you keep going, driven by the need to protect your family and hold on to the hope that tomorrow will be better than today. The sun begins to set earlier now, and the nights are cooler, a welcome relief after the long, grueling days of summer. The harvest is nearing, and though the fields are still a blur of green and gold, you feel a mix of anticipation and dread. In your bones, you know this is a turning point. The work that has consumed you for months is almost over, but the uncertainty of the outcome hangs heavy in the air. Will the crops be enough to feed your family? Will the village survive through the winter? The stakes are higher than ever. The entire village is buzzing with quiet tension. Everyone is waiting for the harvest to come in, wondering whether they'll be able to make it through the coming months. The fields are alive with activity as villagers work together, albeit more quietly now, to gather what's left of the crops. There's still a sense of unity, but it's tempered by the knowledge that resources are limited. Every bushel of grain, every bundle of vegetables is precious. There's a sense of urgency to everything, as though time is running out. You've spent the last several months focused solely on survival. Every moment has been about getting through the day, getting enough food, making sure your child is safe and cared for. But now, with the harvest finally here, you feel a shift. There's something more at stake now than just survival. You're starting to think about the future, what kind of world your child will inherit, what kind of legacy you'll leave behind. It's a strange thought, one that feels almost foreign after all the months of simply trying to stay alive. But as you bend over the crops, feeling the weight of the earth in your hands, you can't help but think about the next generation. What will they inherit? Will they face the same struggles you've endured? Will they have the strength to survive just as you have? You wonder if your child will ever understand just how hard you fought to keep them safe, to provide them with a future. It's a strange thought, but one that brings a sense of peace, knowing that you've done everything you can to prepare for them. And yet, the harvest is still a gamble. Historians still debate whether the medieval approach to farming was truly as efficient as it needed to be. Some argue that crop rotation and the use of manure could have improved yields, while others claim that the methods used were as good as the technology of the time allowed. Regardless, the uncertainty of the harvest is a constant source of stress. You don't know yet how much you'll have to survive the winter. You don't know if the crops will be enough. As you pick the last of the vegetables from the field, your mind drifts back to the early days of your pregnancy. You remember the uncertainty then, too. But it was a different kind of uncertainty, one filled with hope and excitement. Now, as you prepare for the coming winter, there's a new kind of uncertainty, a fear of what's to come. You're not just worried about your own survival anymore. You're worried about your child's future, about whether you've done enough to provide for them. But even in the face of that fear, there's something undeniably beautiful about this moment. You've made it through so much. You've fought for every inch of ground, every scrap of food, every breath of air. You've endured the heat of the summer, the harshness of the winter, the constant struggle to survive. And now, here you are, standing in the middle of your fields, looking out at the fruits of your labor, knowing that you've done everything you can. You may not know what the future holds, but you've done your best. As the sun dips below the horizon, you gather your things and head back to the village. The streets are quieter now, the air cooler. There's a sense of calm that settles over you as you walk through the village, your tired body still moving, but your mind at peace. The days ahead are uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, you allow yourself to feel hopeful. You make your way back to your home, where your child is waiting for you. The warmth of their embrace, the sweetness of their laughter. It reminds you why you've endured all of this. The struggles, the pain, the exhaustion. It's all been for them, for their future. And that thought, that hope, is enough to carry you through the coming months. You've done your part, and now it's up to the future. As you lay down to sleep that night, you think about the journey you've taken. It's been one of hardship and sacrifice, but it's also been one of growth and resilience. You've learned so much about yourself, about the world, and about what it means to survive. You've survived the harshest conditions, the most difficult challenges, and you've come out the other side stronger than ever. The future is uncertain, but for now you rest easy, knowing that you've given everything you could. The rest is out of your hands.